Welcome back, everybody, to the SE Journey, where we like to bring on guests to share their journeys, how they got to sales engineering field. My name is Chris Sprague, and with me, as always, is my co-host there, Zane Allen. How you doing today, Zane?
Great, Chris. Great to be doing this again. I'm happy to do this episode, and really excited about this episode because something a little different we're doing here. We have, if I can introduce the guest already here, we have Bryan Sullins with us. Not Sullivan, not Sully, but Bryan Sullins, who I know through the VMUG community, and we'll get to his story in a minute where he works today. But what I find exciting about this one is he's brand new to this thing called SE. So really get a nice view here of what it's like in the beginning, right? We can remember what it was like for us those many years ago, but we have somebody fresh to the industry today. And so really excited to hear his take.
Yeah, 3 months on Monday.
3 months. Nice. So all out there that are listening that trying to think about getting into the SE game, this is the closest you can get to that transition, right? And we'll talk about story and what that transition means, but very, very excited to have you on, Bryan. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, so let's get to it, Chris.
Yeah, this is exciting. Like you said, I mean, a lot of the reason we do this is we've always said we didn't go to school for this. It took us many years to find our path here. It's exciting when we get a new colleague, right, in the sales engineering field. So I'm excited to talk about it. So
That's right. I had a lot of conversation about people think about coming over, but this is great to hear that they get to that transition. So yeah, Bryan, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself a little more. You have been a blogger, right? So you're not kind of new to that type of the field, but you do come from the customer side of things. But yeah, why don't you tell everybody about who you are and what you're doing currently?
Yeah. So Bryan Sullins, I am a senior SE at VMware right now, currently.
I think people have heard of that.
For the Pacific Northwest, so that's Oregon and Washington currently is what I cover, but we have a larger area as well. But yeah, this 3 months now, and before that, I was at a large retailer that is not Amazon, and I was responsible for. I'm going in reverse chronological order, apparently. And I was responsible for the VMware infrastructure there. I was responsible for the sort of DevOps, all the things, automate all the things, and Kubernetes. So I was responsible for those three big buzzwords there at that particular retailer. And then before that, I was at Dell. And at Dell, there was an infrastructure as a service healthcare cloud, quote unquote, at least what qualifies as cloud in the early, tens. This was around 2012 when I made the transition over to doing engineering for realsies. And that was a very large environment. That was 1,200 plus ESXi hosts. That was 13,000 VMs ish. And we were also responsible for storage. So we did a lot of the storage arrays for there too. The Dell Compellent stream there. And then before that, I was an IT trainer for a really, really long time. And I trained on all the Microsoft certs, the Linux certs, the VMware certs. So that's, in a nutshell, what I did before. And now I'm an SE.
And now you're an SE, but big background there in vSphere and even the cloud stuff. And okay, so
yeah, I
did it for a living, and now you're transitioning into selling it. So that's or supporting it or building out solutions for it.
Yeah.
Nice.
The running joke that I use that my colleagues usually roll their eyes about is that since I have worked very closely with VMware as an engineer for so long, once I had the opportunity to become an SE with VMware, I describe it like the mothership is calling me home and I was compelled to answer, and here I am. That's why I describe it.
They called me home. I love it. Okay,
Well, I was just going to say that one of the many reasons why, and I do have a blog where I talk about this, thinkingoutcloud.org. I'll plug that a few times probably.
Yep, absolutely.
But one of your colleagues if you don't mind me saying. The JD Wallace was one of the many people along this road who encouraged me to get where I am now, because as you mentioned before, I'm pretty heavily involved with VMUG here in the Seattle area
That's
where I'm at. And I had been to a few VMUGs. I had done a talk or two, and JD also was very heavily involved in VMUG, and we were just sitting around at the table, and he wasn't the first person to encourage me to become an SE. And it was kind of a slow transition of the mindset of going from, yeah, I'm doing this infrastructure as code thing. It's pretty cool. I've got some pretty good job security. I felt like I could retire at the place I was. But over time, a lot of people, particularly SEs who were trying to sell me stuff,
Yeah.
were like, have you ever thought about being an SE? I think you'd make a good one. Just to have a little humble brag there. Yeah. And for a while, I kind of demurred. I was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should ripen on the vine a little bit. Maybe I should sort of, process the whole idea of transitioning to the sales as a thing. And then finally sort of JD brought it up, and I have a lot of respect for him. And he's like, you ever thought about being an SE? And I was like, yeah, but those jobs are few and far between because nobody ever leaves them.
Yeah.
Or rarely.
Which means there got to be something to it, right? Yeah.
For reasons, money being one of them, but that's not the primary motivator for me, quite honestly. And I said, hey, they're just few and far between. He's like, well, just get the word out now. It's like, you have a network of people through VMUG and the network that you have of people. Tell them now that you're interested, so that if they feel like you're worthy of that, then they will call. And that's exactly what happened. I knew somebody who worked at VMware. I let her know I was interested, and sure enough, 9 months later, I got the call, and the rest is history, as it were. So
awesome. So you were happy with where you were. That's the great time to go look for something new, right? It's like, well, maybe my next goal is here, but I'm not stressing to find that role. You were very happy where you were. You were doing something that was fulfilling, all the things. So that's great. Great perspective. Great advice.
Yeah, I think it is. And first of all, as far as people learning or people, thinking about doing this, take JD's advice, which is get the word out now. Don't wait. I think a lot of IT people, it's very common. I think this is common knowledge. And I think everybody, even at the management level, understands this. That IT people are always looking, always be looking. Right. I put the word out. I honestly didn't think anything would come of it. And also the job I have now was not the first one I interviewed for, because the two previous that I just didn't get a good feeling. I didn't really believe in I'll keep it anonymous, but I didn't believe in their products. And I was like, yeah, I'll pass. But this one, I was like, hey, this is something I've been doing for a really long time. I know the strengths and weaknesses and where the bodies are buried, so I could hit the ground running in some respects.
That's a great point. It's got to be something that you want to stand behind, right? And feel comfortable architecting a real solution, and it's going to be good when you put it together.
You can tell stories about it too, right? That maybe came into play. Like you knew you could translate stories to having sat behind the keyboard, if you will, sitting in that position that maybe someone you're helping. You could take more of a consultative approach to your sale, right? It's not. And the reason I ask that is I know a lot of people I've talked about when I came over, they're like, oh, I could never go into sales. And I'm like, well, if you think of it like that, like I'm just trying to convince somebody to buy something from me, instead of, hey, no, I know these solutions. I've been building them forever, or for myself or my organization. I can grow and help others in others' organizations. I think it's a whole different approach, and the one that I like to take, right?
Definitely a mindset that I had.
Yeah. Right. Maybe that comes into play. I don't want to put words in your mouth there, Bryan, but maybe just asking if that's.
No, it's true. I mean, the way I looked at it, making the transition, and, I can't stress enough that I had VMware had 7 interviews. So it was the usual gauntlets of interviews. It was brutal for a reason. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't, brutal and lengthy, I would have been like, But, it seemed like it fit for the caliber of company that they are. And I spoke with a lot of different SEs because at my previous jobs, I've been fortunate enough to work at enterprises before coming into VMware. So I worked for very large organizations, and very large organizations are widely coveted by vendors or other vendors, right?
Yep.
And so talking to them, I was like, hey, man, they've been doing it as SEs. So a lot of the people who tried to sell me things, they're still close friends of mine. They're part of my network. I called them for advice, which I might call you guys at 2:00 in the morning sometime, just as a jab. But
reminder of our old IT days. There's the
yeah,
2
yeah, it'll
phone
keep
call.
things fun. Yeah, that's right. But
yeah, I miss it.
The way
sure.
the conversation, I'm a sounding board person, and a lot of times I need to say things out loud before it's sort of registered. And the thing that sort of made me realize that I've actually been doing this a lot longer than I thought is the fact that, particularly with the whole automation aspect, because if I've always tried to set myself apart from my peers, and the way I did that is through automation.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens with automation is you get a lot of pushback. You get a lot of people who are like, whoa, we never automated things in the past, and they're skeptical about it. So for at least 4 years previous, I had to make a case to sell the automation that I do.
Yeah.
So that whole idea of, okay, I'm selling something internally, the process, in my humble opinion, the only difference is that doing it professionally, you're going to see a tangible, if you're successful at it, you'll see the tangible, they sign on the dotted line and you get money for it for the company with which you work. Otherwise, it's like, I'm getting buy-in so I can do this thing that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it can be frustrating.
Well, what you probably believe
go ahead.
is the right thing for the organization too, right? It's not just,
1,000%.
You should be doing this, and here's all the benefits.
Yeah, and it's kind of frustrating too because sometimes the pushback's legitimate, or a lot of people have like really good questions. Which I was fortunate enough to work with some really good people who were like, oh, you know what, that is something we should think about when we do this. I get it. But every once in a while there'd be somebody who's like, why are we doing this? Because it's going to save the company $167,000 over the next year. Well, why is this a tough sell for you? I don't get it.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah.
Because, early in IT, realize we're not inherently lazy, but we definitely want to not do repetitive tasks. Things that could be done by the system itself should be left to the system. But put the work up front, right, to build that automation so that you have and you can move on to other things, right? There's other things you can do to innovate. And Chris and I work for a company. That's kind of our take on everything. Like, why don't we eliminate all this tasks that you shouldn't be thinking about so you can go do whatever the business is. So we get that. I'm curious and I don't know if you had some, Chris, but those other companies, which you don't have to name, I get it. Did you go into those interviews knowing you didn't really believe in the tech, or is that something you discovered as you were interviewing, kind of to the vein of, you shouldn't, if you're thinking about getting in this industry, maybe you should go out and explore those opportunities, even though, you might decide along the way they aren't for you, or were you just trying to get into the industry, if I may ask? And we're just,
are you asking for like the IT career previous
no,
to this
I'm sorry, the
customer
SE
side
stuff. The SE stuff. You said you had a couple organizations you interviewed outside of vSphere.
Oh, okay. The ones that I did. Yeah. The ones that I
Did you know that about the tech, that you weren't too much of a believer in it? Did you kind of find that out in the interview process? Were you just trying to kind of find an SE role, or just curious your thoughts on that? If you have
yeah, really kind of one of them was a conversation that I had with somebody in my network, and, he kind of described the whole situation, and I was like, yeah, I don't think that this is really like a good, but it may have been, yeah. So here's the answer for the first opportunity was, it didn't strike me as a good one for me to do my first time out as an SE.
Okay.
There are a lot of advantage. Like it wasn't just the fact that I believe in VMware. It's also the fact that there's a huge support system there. There's, the capability of bringing in a lot of more well-seasoned people, because as an SE, a lot of our times is to like, at least the way it is where I work now is, asking the proper questions to move things on to the next part of the deal. And we have a lot of specialists who come in and, really get, because I by the fact that we have such a large, wide range of products at VMware,
Yeah.
I am by definition a generalist.
Yeah.
Because part of my, I'm supposed to sort of get them on the hook with the different technologies that are going to benefit them, and I make those business connections between what they're trying to do and the different things that we offer. And we have such a wide portfolio. There's no way I could be an expert in everything. So we have.
I know the nuance of every one of these
moving
products. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so like an example,
you're listening to the customer, getting the situation. Oh, I think this is where we can help, and I know my product line. So why don't we stitch these together, and I'll bring in. These. So as far
as like there were. Yeah, so as far as like the two factors with VMware, I was like, yes, I believe in the product, but also there's a huge support system for somebody like me, and there was full disclosure in all of it. Everybody I talked to in interviewing for VMware, they were very well aware that I've been in the IT industry as an engineer previously, so there was no like everybody very well understood that I don't have any quote unquote experience as like a field SE, we'll call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the first one was, it was just like, seems like an okay product, but it's not really something that I can do right out of the gate, the first one. And then the other one, I just didn't believe in the product at all. And it was kind of a non-starter.
So I think you answered my question saying generalist, but one of my questions was going to be, so what is your role? You're a core SE then, or whatever the term VMware uses for that role.
That is what we use, yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we talk about it, we call it the SE journey, but could be sales engineer, systems engineer, solutions architect, right? There's all the cloud architects. There's all those names. So, but you're the core field SE, and then, you have all sorts of, VMware has a ton of products now, right? So you have all sorts of specialists across those.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff that I did previously helps me out tremendously in what VMware sells. I mean, I am able to hit the ground running, even though we didn't run, for example, Tanzu, even though we didn't run that at my previous gig, understanding the underpinnings of how Kubernetes works and then translating that into Tanzu. And then also I was neck deep in Kubernetes previously. So some of the products I can just hit the ground running on. It's just a matter of translating how the nuances of how VMware does it, for example. But there are others that we sell a lot of that I have no real experience in, like Horizon, for example, right? So I'm trying to get as much ramped up as I possibly can on it, while also deferring to a lot of the experts that do that. Although over time, my goal would be to be more well-versed in them so that it at least takes some of the burden off of the experts to where, they can kind of start with, the basics, because Bryan explained all of that to you. Let's get into like, what are your more deep technical questions that I just don't have the ability to answer as of yet.
Yep.
You mentioned your previous role, like you did Kubernetes, automation, a bunch of VMware stuff. Pretty good things to get into to get yourself into VMware, right? So anybody out there listening, those are good avenues if you like that stuff.
What could you look at in your IT career if you're in IT to build those skill sets? Yep.
So, something else I wanted to ask you, Bryan. I actually, in your first 5 minutes of talking, I think I had like 12 questions. Probably it was really interesting.
Hey, we can block out more time. It's cool.
One of them you mentioned was I liked your humble brag that other people were telling you you'd be good at the SE role.
Yeah.
Kind of for the listeners out there, what do you think it was they saw in you that made them say that, right? If you have thoughts. I mean, I have my own thoughts, but
I do. Yeah. Well, I'm going to make this into a much longer answer, but I promise you I'll come back to like answering the question. The way I look at it, and I did post a blog post on this and thinkingoutcloud.org on like what got me here from, and I went back 2 decades.
We're going to put little chimes in here. Plug two.
Yeah, plug number 2. Nice. Yeah, like I said, I have no shame. I told you this.
No, absolutely.
We'll put it in the show. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, I appreciate that. All right. That's your way of saying shut up about it, Brian. We'll put it in the show notes.
No.
No.
In fact, I'm going to come back and talk to you about that. So
Hey, it's the
Okay.
exact
Yeah, cool.
opposite.
Yeah.
Feel free to
Too
talk
bad.
about
All
as
right.
much as you want because we're good with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I started in IT, quote unquote. My way in was training. I was actually came from the public school teacher space. That's what we were talking about, like not getting a degree in SE originally. I did not. I got my degree in literature and English education.
That's
Imagine that.
interesting. I want to come back to the teacher thing. But anyway,
Yep, that's
go
cool.
ahead.
And
Yeah.
then 2019 or 1999, actually, I switched over to training, and I started with training like all basic computers and working my way up. So for like 12 years, I actually did IT training, working my way up, getting more technical certs and whatnot. And then in 2000, I also got my master's degree in information systems management, which set me on my road for like doing all of the business acumen stuff. So knowing how to do an ROI, I still use those skills. The master's degree was totally worth it because I can make those sort of business related, connections with what I'm selling. So, and then training, I'm public speaking. I get out in front of people. I have no problem doing public speaking. I draw all the things. I can make drawings. I whiteboard, all that other stuff. And then getting the experience, switching to engineering for realsies in 2012. So there's that. We talked about the selling things internally, and then really the last real step was I got involved with VMUG, and I guess we can sort of indirectly think of COVID as an additional thing that acted as the impetus for this, because I am not your stereotypical leave me alone and let me do my work IT person, not by any stretch of the imagination. And I actually started working from home since like 2009. So I've been working from home since before it was a thing. And at first, the novelty of it was great. It's like, okay, cool, this is awesome. But then like 3 years later, I gained 30 pounds and, I drank like a fish and I was talking to inanimate objects in my house. It was kind of that frog in boiling water where it's like, yeah, working from home really isn't my thing. And then I literally signed
isolate
on
yourself
to,
all the time, right? Sometimes it's good.
Oh,
but yeah,
I
I get that.
I ended up, coming up with my own strategies for overcoming those issues because you have to.
Yeah.
And then I literally signed on to my last gig before this one because they do have a 3 in, 2 day out policy. So you have 3 days in the HQ and then 2 days out. And then 6 months later, no, a year and a half later, COVID hits, and then I'm back working from home again.
Oh,
And Try is the last company. Try as they might, they tried to do a lot of like, okay, we're going to have these festivities. Well, everybody was still over the state of Washington so spread out throughout even like the western part of Washington. So we had people down in like Tacoma, which is kind of a long drive and all of that. There's still no interactions. And on top of that, I guess you can look at it on LinkedIn, but the company I work for, the HQ, ended up getting sold off during the pandemic. So we had no HQ to speak of, quote unquote. So it was like nobody for a really long time. And so I just was even more isolated. And I just died every day inside, quite honestly, because I love talking to people. I love hearing about people's quirky like hobbies and shit. Like I have so many questions, Chris, about all the stuff that you got back there, like your Star Wars and your Zelda shirt and all it. Yeah, it's cool. Well, we're geeks. It's cool. Like, you get a chance to do that.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I love hearing about that kind of thing. So I just naturally over time, and I guess it's sort of a slow progression too. Just like, I just love talking to people. I know, to use the old cliche, I am a people person, and it showed at VMUG. And I guess really kind of what prompted this and the people, to get back to your question of like, how did people see that in me? It was just the fact that I just like interact with people. I'm interested. I'm authentic. I'm like, tell me about this thing that you do. Like I ran into a guy who he makes his own tobacco pipes, and they're beautiful.
Wow.
And I'm like, a lot of people might be bored by that, but I'm like, show me everything. How do you do it? I have so many questions out. Do you own a lathe? How do you work those? Where do you get the wood from? Like all the kind of, like, I love that kind of stuff. And I think it showed. And I think that's what, like, where JD was like, dude, you should really do this. And I'm like, okay. So that was kind of the last step really, is that whole idea of, I'm really sick and tired of sitting in my desk, just doing all these things. I love coding, don't get me wrong, but without the additional benefit of talking to people, just like, it was killing me.
Yeah, I realized that's about myself a long time ago too. I can't just sit in front of the monitor for 9 hours and then be fine.
Nope.
You got to do the interaction or other things. Yeah.
What's been great? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you already really kind of answered this, but I like the education piece. And this came up in another one, though. I don't know when Joe was on here. He had his family was educators, and I was wondering if there was a tie of why he wanted to be an SE. I myself was able to. I was an adjunct professor at in California, the university I attended. After I, graduated, got my master's, and was working in the industry. I loved it. Wasn't really a role. I didn't have a PhD or anything, and so the roles there were kind of, they were what they were. But I liked that when I tried to stitch to SE, I said, "Oh, it is the aspect of the IT piece I've done." And I agree with you. When I had my first interview, I said, "I sell every day. I know I haven't sold before, but I do." So at that part, right, the solution selling, the going out and kind of stitching stuff together, say, "Hey, this is how we're going to solve this problem, I think, and this is what it's going to take," and then that teaching. The teaching piece and being able to kind of continue that education. Not to mention, I think teaching forces you, I should say, to have to understand something on such a pretty big level so that you can break it down. And I'm not going to say I think I strive every day to be successful at that. I'm not saying I'm always successful, but really, you understand something if you could break it down for somebody. So it sounds like you kind of answered the yes, that is all the factors that brought you to this, but just kind of wanted to double down on the education piece. Not saying people have 100%. To be an educator, but it was true for me.
No, but I mean, I taught freshman and junior English at the public high school level for 2 years. I had no business doing it. I was still a kid myself. I was in my early 20s.
Wow.
I had no idea. I had no disciplinary capabilities whatsoever.
So you're dealing with adolescents.
I
prepared you for dealing with IT people, right? I'm just kidding. IT people.
Yeah.
I myself was one. I include myself in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess the answer is yeah. Sorry to cut you off there, but
I mean, as far as the whole idea of what are you doing as an SE, it isn't necessarily just about presentations. It's the whole whiteboarding. I feed off the whole idea of, hey, we need to do this thing, but I need to know, or the customer needs to do something. Okay, well, let's draw it out. What do things look like now? What's your, we have this thing, and maybe it's in your world of what you do as well, which is this whole idea of current state and future state. I'm assuming that's a relatively common conversation, so we talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, here's
you guys tell me as the more seasoned SEs. Am I on the right track?
And I used to do it a lot. I mean, Chris and I have kind of left the direct SE role, but it still happens. But definitely that happens. Maybe some of that works before we get there. When I was an SE, absolutely. And I don't know if you're the same, and you can see me talk with my hands mostly on here. I'm a visual thinker, 1000%. And the whiteboard lets me do exactly that. Oh, tell me what your state looks like so I can see it. And let's bolt some stuff on here and talk about the solution we're going to do. I'm actually working this out in my head live with you, and we're doing this together. Or maybe I already did work it out and I'm putting it down, but and it has something, and it lets me do something with my hands. So I'm not just, building in imaginary boxes.
The educational term for that type of thinking would be that you have abstract thinking skills.
I think you could call me abstract. Sure. Is that right? Okay. I do tend to, and this is kind of totally off topic, but I do tend to think out loud. I know that kind of freaks people out. You got to bring them into that. Like, hey, we're, see my partner over here.
I have a story about that.
I think out loud. And I had a HR professional. I think they were called a business HR. That's when I worked for the newspaper chain. She was a PhD, and I'm just talking to her, and she goes, "You're a visual learner or thinker." And I'm like, okay. She goes, "Yeah, you do think out loud. It probably bothers people, but if you just let them know." And I'm like, "Hey, thank you. I was in my 20s then too." I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe that is the problem." Some of the stuff I'm saying, you don't need to come along for the ride. I'll let you know when to jump on. But anyway.
Sorry, I think out loud too, especially when I'm angry. Like that's how that's my healthy way. Well, heavy metal music and like yelling out loud, is the way I just get. It's just like I feel the aggression going down and down as I do those things. I don't yell at somebody.
We shouldn't be worried. It's a healthy process, and we know it's getting solved.
It is a healthy
process. Hear you do that.
Yeah.
That's great.
There's no violence involved with it, and it's a healthy way of getting rid of it. But now, like, I've always been that way, and I would sit out on our porch or patio, whatever it's called in your locale, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like I will work a lot of stuff out by talking out loud. And I used to, like, my wife's so used to it now, she doesn't think anything of it. But at first I'd be like, oh, sorry, I'm talking to myself. She's like, you don't need to apologize. That's how you work stuff out. I get it. All right, cool.
I think it still gets my wife. She goes, I don't know when I'm supposed to respond. And it's like stresses me out when you just come up talking. And I'm like, yeah, you know. She goes, hey, you're just thinking out loud. All right. Like, look at me. Am I supposed to respond to you? Like, no, we're good.
Well, do you have that as an agreement where she says that? Do I need to pay attention or?
Yeah, I think we have to come up with that signal. Got a reminder every now and then. She doesn't know. And actually being home with COVID, to your point, me being on a phone, right? I got little blue or little white things in my ear. It's like, are you talking to me? Are you talking out loud? Are you talking to some other disembodied voice on the line in some other state?
Yeah.
It's a little more confusing nowadays, but yeah.
Well,
so
that's funny
abstract thinker. I'm an abstract thinker, Chris. So no more making fun of me. Just
we know that.
You heard it here.
We probably all are, and somewhat a little bit, right? Thinking out loud. Brings back another thought that I had when Bryan was talking about being inquisitive, right? Being inquisitive, having that natural, ability to think or want to know about stuff makes the discovery process of being an SE much easier, I would think, right? Like I've definitely seen some very good at it, some that struggle at it more. But if you're already one of those people that wants to know about stuff, it's a lot easier than actually, that's a skill you have to learn how to do discovery and figure out about in a customer's environment and all the architecture. But I don't know, you tell me what you think, Bryan, but I've already noticed it. You're very naturally inquisitive. It's got to make you really good at that. And it makes sense that that's something that stuck out to other SEs about you, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm still learning when it comes to like customer interactions. I don't know where to start with this part, but I'm learning more and more this whole idea of questioning being the main method for extracting information. I know it seems obvious now that I say that out loud, but there's a lot of times where you just need to shut up and, like you said, be inquisitive. I am somewhat of an imperative person, and I get that from 12 years of having to like convince people of having to do it my way because it's the right way sort of situation. I kid, but
a lot of yelling and talking on the porch is what you're saying. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Let me record this, and like that way you can listen to me. Yeah. But like I'm slowly but surely learning this whole idea of like being imperative can sometimes be a little threatening, even if you don't mean to be.
Yeah.
Sure.
That sort of thing.
Do you think it might speak to your, and I'm probably taking off where your train of thought was going, Chris, passion's really the only word I have for it. Your passion, your enthusiasm for
100%.
what you're talking about it for what it is, which also, maybe that's what we're talking about here. Is a positive, I think, for an SE because that's what you're trying to convey. But I could see to your point where it could also turn into not threatening, but overbearing or put defenses up on the other side and learning to kind of balance that.
Yeah, I think as I gain more and more experience with here's something that has worked against me, and that is I have been fortunate enough to work at enterprise level companies who have money, not always like, and it's not unlimited money, but like if it's something that does get a good ROI and whatnot. And I had a lot of trust from the people who I reported to, like, okay, hey, this thing over here, this is something that we should consider purchasing.
You can make the
So
business case for it,
large,
right? And show the
you make
show
a
the
business
value.
case for
Yeah.
it. The companies I work with now are not categorized as enterprise level companies. They're sort of small to medium sized businesses who, they're VMware existing customers or whatever. That's the sort of realm I work with now, and it's a different world, and I'm getting more and more used to it by the day. Because the other
Okay.
thing that I know this is going to sound super. I don't
No,
know if
that's an
manipulative is
interesting
the right word, but,
translation
like,
because if
yeah.
I hear you right, you're working with companies, and I work in the commercial space, so I get it.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the way I should do it, but I don't have that budget. So what else you got?
100%.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
And having to
And
kind of adjust to
yeah,
that. Yeah.
and the transition has been kind of like, a lot of the companies, it's a different world. I don't mean this in a detrimental way to a lot of these companies, but they're smaller companies who are short on staff, and they're working on kind of a shoestring budget, that sort of thing, and they'll describe this problem to me, and I'm like, well, that's I don't say this out loud, but
Yeah.
a lot of times they'll describe a problem to me that we used to solve while eating a sandwich over lunch at my old job. You know what I mean? It's like,
right. Hey, just buy this thing and put
but
it
we
in,
had the means and the money by which to do that. So the challenge is I have to have this mind shift of, okay, well, we need to be resourceful here, because I'm always about, like, yes, being inquisitive, but also, like, it needs to be mutually beneficial. Like, I'm pretty sure this is also a thing, and I know this is going to sound cliche, and there are probably some skeptics on the listening to this who may not believe me when I say it. And I know you two are like this too, which is I'm going to make sure that what we're doing together, the consultative sales sort of thing, is something that's going to be beneficial for you, that you're on board with, that we've walked through everything, 100%. We've done all the things, we whiteboarded everything. I'm never going to, like, oh, I need to hit my quota, so I'm going to shove down their throat something that I know they don't really need, but I gotta meet a number. Like, so far with
that's for the
working where I am now, every person I work with has always been of that same mindset, where it's like, no, this is a consultative sale. We're going to be, we're all into, working with, and this is, I think I can say this, where we're an extension of their team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The trusted advisor model, which is exactly what I signed on for. That I'm a long game person also, 100%. It's like, I know that me helping you right now, I've literally said this on calls where it's like, hey, what we're doing right here, we make $0 on what we're talking about right now. I want to help you solve the problem. Right.
Those are good things to point
down
out.
The road,
it sounds salesy, but you're really trying to show them, like, no, I'm trying to do the right thing here. Like, you own this already, right? Or whatever. Let's just do it. Yeah, exactly. No, I always looked at it as, I believe in the customer life cycle, and maybe that's my MBA training, but sales are one thing, but I'm not selling. We want to keep a customer. We want to grow a customer. I like to build things. I like to see success at the end of that rainbow. So anyway,
well,
I get it.
The long game is something that I've seen, because, like, a lot of what I'm operating on now, and it's getting better and better, like, what I'm operating on now is previous to working at VMware. I worked with a lot of really, really good SEs. A lot of them, like I said, are still friends of mine now. And I've worked with a lot of bad ones. So I'm taking all the good experiences and I'm going by that. And being a long game person already, a lot of times there were SEs who weren't pushy, but they were into the relationship part. They would have, like, a monthly cadence where they would, like, hey, let's just talk. Maybe we're not going to talk about something we're going to sell you. Let's just, like, have, like, a half hour where we talk about what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times there's a possible, for lack of a better term, sale that could be made, we'll call it, that I'd be like, yeah, we're just not, that's not a thing for us right now. But then 4 months later or 6 months later, since we already have the relationship, hey, tell me about this new thing. Here's a problem we're having, and we actually would like your help. So, like, 6 months later could turn into something.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad, right? Going back to listening, right? Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought that around to listening, because I think I mentioned inquisitive and maybe discovery and even questions. But to make it clear for us, and especially those listening, what really actually what really my mind about it was your inquisitive nature leads you to want to listen and actually hear the answers, right? Not just ask questions. And that's actually where I was going with that. Like, you know, you want to know how the guy carves out his tobacco pipes, right? The wooden pipes.
Mm-hmm.
Not so you could ask questions, but so you can get the answers and really listen. And I think that is really, really important. And I like how you brought that around. Like, different customers have different needs. So I can't just go tell them, right? I've got to listen to them and build a solution that fits them. So I'm glad you did. I kind of missaid it maybe, but that's really what caught my mind was how much you're interested in hearing the answers. And I think, well, for me, I can't speak for everyone, but that's one of the things for me. As you see, I'm geeky. We get excited here. Sometimes we talk over each other, you know, and I noticed when I first started, people start talking. I get so excited about what they're saying. I'll jump in. Right. Yeah. And you got to go, okay, hold off.
I love talking about that.
Slow your roll, Chris. Yeah. Let them finish. Let's hear their story. And then we go at it. Right. So
it's hard to do.
That's a skill too. Yeah.
Or you've heard the thing before, so it was just easy to jump on it. You're like, but let's let them tell they have to be heard, right? Yeah.
It is hard to do, but to your point, you know, the whole comparison of, you know, towards the end of my sort of IT engineer career before I started doing this, I could really kind of smell out the whole like SE who just like what I call the finger guns type. It's kind of like a stereotypical like used car salesman thing. So if there was a new SE and we got onto this call where they're doing their pitch as we say so in the industry.
Pitch. Yeah, you got to get the pitch down.
And if they just like, pitch. Yep. And if the SE was just like, you know, here's the SE, and then the SE starts talking, and then like they start talking for a few minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, nope, you're out. You are done, sir or ma'am, because you're not listening to me. Like, I'm supposed to tell you what I want, especially at the last company I was at, because we really had our stuff together. Yeah. So a lot of times we already knew what we wanted to do. We were just asking you how you can fit in with what we're doing. If you try to come in here and try to like redefine what you think we should be doing, you're not. We're getting started off on the wrong foot.
Unless you explicitly asked, right? Like, we have no idea what to do in this area.
Yes.
What you got?
That is also a thing.
But you led that, is what you're saying, right? And I always tried that with my pitches or demos or whatever. Like, hey, so I understand these are the things you're trying to solve. Is that right? It's what you want to see, whatever it is. At least check in with them, right? At least go, hey, I want to say words to you that are relevant and you're going to actually pick up on. I don't want to just show you all the buttons. I think that's what you're saying, but that's interesting insight right there. Hey, I was a customer and I would just reject you right off the gate if you made this.
And by the way, what I found usually with the SEs who did that is like they just have like this boilerplate thing, and rather than like going from the customer to them and figuring out what the customer needs, they would just like, you know, have a boilerplate of stuff because they really don't have any knowledge outside of their whole little pitch, and that's it. So it was a double whammy. It's like, not only are you not listening to me, I also know you don't know what you're talking about. So that sort of thing.
Because you know this talk track. Great. I'll watch a YouTube. I'll watch a YouTube pitch. I don't need you. One
of the first books I read, and I can't remember when I came over to the SE side when I made the jump. I can't remember the title of it, so sorry. But basically, one of the things in there was there is no standard demo, right?
There is. Just give them the standard demo. What the hell does that mean?
We all have one, but you know, it's like the sales guy's gonna say, just give them your standard demo. No. What are we here to help this customer solve, right?
Yeah.
I think that goes back to what you said. We're there to help customers solve create a solution to solve a problem, not to sell a product. Right? I think that's what's cool about our jobs. When you think you started out like
you're looking towards outcomes.
We were all worried about moving into sales, and that was one of the things when I was like sales engineer. Oh, so there's a sales guy that can do that stuff, and I get to be the guy that talks about how it implements and what are you trying to solve for. And the good sales guys do that as well, right?
Yeah.
I've also had, I've been in a number of those, Brian, where we begin and they go, hey, my name's blah, blah, blah. Guy, good to see you guys today. Here's Chris. You're like, oh, okay. I got this whole thing now. Thanks, teammate. But I always went to that. It's like, I'm not going to just jump into a demo. Even if I pull it up, I'm going to start asking questions about what the customer is looking for. Like Zane said, reiterate why we believe we're here and make sure those are correct.
At least go down a path that you can start probing questions if you're not getting, because I've had those, right? They're just not saying anything like, oh, so, you know, this is working. Like, just something you do. Let me call back to you so you give me some sort of input. Otherwise, it's a lecture. Yep.
Yeah. So now we're getting more into being an SE when we really talk about the journey. So one question, another question.
Brand new SE here, right? And he's kind of.
That's where I'm going. So
that's the way.
Okay, there you go.
And you don't have to answer this question if you don't want, but. Being new, are you happy that you made the transition?
And we
man, that is a great question. Yes, that's a great question.
Or we will.
It's kind of cool because I get to field questions on this one because you are the inquisitive ones, and now I just get to field them. So I've actually broken this down into two answers. Oh. The first answer is Bryan happy doing the SE? And the answer is 1,000 freaking %. The whole idea of like, hey, and we are starting to get back into a groove of like traveling out, getting face to face, doing the whole like SE, wine and dine. Here, let's go out to dinner and talk about all your stuff, right? That sort of thing. It's a drug that I hope never wears off for me, because like I love talking to people face to face. So that part has really worked out. So is Bryan 100% happy with what I am doing? 1,000% for all those different reasons. I was well prepared by my network of SEs and my friends who are SEs, where I was like, what should I be expecting? And like everything that they've told me and all my instincts about it and all the things that I knew going in have worked out, or even if they weren't what I expected, they worked out in the more positive light. And some of the SEs that I've also been talking to, just that I run into, because we also have, partner meetings and whatnot, more than one have told me it's like the way you made the wrong move as being an SE is you have this sort of draw going back to doing what you did before. Like, I really want to go back and code in Python, or I really want to go back and do some YAML or whatever. Nope. One single inkling. Well, I haven't thought about it at all.
Nice.
Now, I'm only 3 months in. Don't get me wrong.
It'll come up, but you're glad you have that skill set, but I get you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think the likely thing, if things work out financially, if I do feel like I want to go back to those things, I'll probably go the home lab route. I can foresee that at some point. That's more of a money thing. Yeah.
That's where most of us SCs got back into it, right, Chris? Should be fair to say. We kind of build a home lab. I get a little hands-on here. Yeah. I get to break stuff. It's fun. And it helps us also talk about it more too, right? If I go touch it.
I can see that happening.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy way to have the outcome. Because you're no longer hands on the keyboard, and I know you haven't said that here, but as an SE, you're the advisor. They do the work, right? You're not a professional services person. Those groups exist. We are really here to guide them. Even customers that were like, "Hey, do you just want to take control?" I'm like, "How about I tell you how to do it and why I think you should do it, and let you make the choice on your own keyboard." And you really have to make that distinction. So, home lab is a good place to go. Break stuff. So, yep.
I want to come back to the trusted advisor thing, if we can.
Yeah.
But the second part of my answer of like, is this thing I think is going to work? So the first answer is Bryan happy doing it? Yes. The second answer is, am I successful from external feedback? Like, do my peers, the people I work with, and the company I work for, are they happy with what I'm doing? It might be too early to tell. Yes, 100%. A lot of our success is based on, did you hit or exceed your sales number? I get it, right?
Comes down to revenue, absolutely.
But as a long game person, before we do like the end of the quarter stuff, the end of the month stuff, how do I know I'm doing well in the first place? Which is kind of hard to measure, because I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm picking up sort of like the SE job is what you make it. Mm-hmm. Like there was no real like, I mean, there's formalized training, sure.
Sure.
that's good.
I get where you're going. When you have a sales partner and you have a territory, you run it like your business. A good
Yes.
company lets you
Could
run it
we-
like it's your business, right?
Almost say it's
Well, but also,
you starting to
like,
learn what your brand is in this space, maybe too. I
correct.
can throw that out
Yeah,
there.
it's
Like,
building your own brand,
who
but
do
then
I wanna
also,
be?
like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of different ways you can do the SE job from what I've seen. From people I meet internally, like there are some SEs who do super awesome and they have almost zero technical knowledge, and good for them. I a lot of times I am able to fall back on my technical knowledge when all else fails to, like, score some points with a customer, for example, as it were. So it's also like, since I can make it my own, what is the rubric criteria for knowing that I am successful?
yeah.
So far, it's been word of mouth. Like, well, he's sing your praises. They bring you into calls, don't they? Yes. It's like, okay, I guess I'm doing all right. It might just be too early to kind of tell, because as I, tick these different various boxes, however amorphously defined, there are newer and newer things that I'm either guided for and I don't know about, or things that I just, like, come up on my own. It's like, okay, well, now I have this one thing down about, like, doing this, whatever it is, and can now move on to this other thing. So I'm still on the rise, as it were.
Sure.
3
months in.
As far as I know, it's a two-way 360 thing where I'm happy, they're happy, and I keep wanting to do it every day. I wake up like, let's do this, that sort of thing.
Awesome. I think it can be a scary leap. And we didn't even ask you if it was well, it sounded like you were like, no. So I guess it was and then you were finally convinced. But I think a lot of us, that's what we do. Once we cross that border or cross that edge, whatever, step out off the ledge, if you will. It is that never look back, right? Like, I really, I know that. I even used to joke, worst day here, still better than most days in ops. Sorry, that's just how my experience was. But because it's a whole different game, right? I'm not up I think we just kidded about getting calls at 2 a.m. That doesn't happen anymore, right? So it's a different world, different pressures and stresses. But yeah, we tend to love it. So maybe it's not for everybody. We haven't interviewed somebody yet. Maybe that's one to put for the show for the future. Somebody that was an SE and went back. That'd be an interesting perspective. But I tend to believe they don't have the feelings that you have, right? That's probably why. Anyway,
likely.
Yeah, awesome. So, well, Bryan, I guess before we wrap it up here, is there anything else? This has been great, first of all, but is there anything else from what we talked about that you might point out? Again, our kind of goal is help people understand if this is something they could get into, be good at. Anything you might, point out to them as far as, this helped me get here, or this is what I like doing that drew me to this? Last thoughts?
Yeah, so I do talk about it a lot on my blog, thinkingoutcloud.org. But I guess we can, cover two things at once to that end, which I wanted to put a pin in the whole trusted advisor thing. Let's just go ahead and, talk about that now.
Yeah. We could talk about your blog as well, because I'm wondering how it, factored into your role as an SE as well, right? Because you've kind of done that stuff already, and some people wait till they're an SE to do it.
Yeah. So
maybe.
Yeah, it's what I'm calling the trusted advisor paradox, where you are at the same time told that you need to be a trusted advisor, but also don't give advice to the customer because you're in pre-sales. That sort of paradox there.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of long story short, it's a bit of a balance. It's a balancing act of picking and choosing when you do that, because and people warn me about that. They say, well, you shouldn't really be doing a lot of advice, because I'm very well aware 100% my job is to make money. My job is to sell for the company. My job is to, that's sort of the primary thing. And it can be easy to get bogged down with the whole consultative side path of I've been in situations before where it's like, if they just gave this to me, I could fix this in a week. You know what I mean? If they just gave me access, I could fix this in a week. Because
Oh,
a lot of
right.
times, if I can fix this one thing, then that opens the doorway to like them going on to the next, like for their journey of what they want to do. So then it's like we can move things across on our end as well, as we move through whatever relationship we have, right?
Mhm.
So, but so it's easy to go down that rabbit hole of, oh well, I'll just go ahead and do this for them, or I'll consult, or let's do a screen share. But every time you do that, that might take away from other things that you can be doing. It's a sort of opportunity cost of doing that can be detrimental to like your performance, right? And it can be a rabbit hole, and you can get stuck doing that and whatnot. And it's just I've learned to just kind of pick and choose.
Yep.
I've done screen shares, but I've done it in justified reasons where it's like I have this sort of math in my head where it's like, is this something that I'm likely to be able to fix for them? And if it is, how long is it going to take? And if I can, reasonably do this in half an hour, let's do a screen share. Let's go over it. And then cool. Okay. So that would be a circumstance under which I would. But for the most part, I keep them at arm's length. Oh, we're having this problem with the thing. All right. Open a support ticket. I'll help you. Here you go. Blah, blah, blah. That sort of thing.
You,
Yeah,
So,
that's-
you,
so yeah,
you got to
that's,
get out of the realm, and you're new to SE, right? And maybe this is what you're saying of, I used to go fix this because that's what you did.
Yes.
You were the guy. I mean, you were the guy,
tough,
right?
especially when you're new. Yeah.
And I'd have the skill set, and it was your go-to. I get it. We were both there to, you're learning the resources that you have, right? One of the reasons you wanted VMware, I keep saying vSphere, go to work for VMware because of all the backing you have. And it's not just from the sales organization, it's all the way through support, right? So yeah, I would say over time you learn how to use those resources. Where I learned this, if I may add, I was at an MSP for a while, and our director of ops looked at us and said, how come you guys won't just call support, right? Because we had many apps that we supported. And half the time, if I just got on the phone, they'll fix it in 20 minutes instead of us like, well, I want to have the answers. I want to be the smart guy. And she's like, just get it fixed. You're billable by the hour. I don't know what your problem is, right? Like, I was like, you're kind of right. And when I got into IT management, I learned that too, right? Now it's vendor management for most things. I can take care of the things I can take care of, but we also pay large amounts of maintenance for these certain systems so that somebody could help me with these things that may take me longer to do. So
yeah.
I think that's kind of, and I get it, but you also have to balance it because it's also, I'm putting a lot of concepts here. There are tactical engagements and there are strategic engagements, right? Tactical, let's just get this done. It's the right thing. Strategic, maybe I'll take a little extra time here because I do want this great outcomes. I do want this customer life cycle. I do want this relationship to build. Or, I mean, and we even done it, and you're on the manufacturer side. So that's another level, right? Because you're removed from the partner, from the professional services tier, right? You're kind of just on the manufacturer level, you're a piece of a solution. And anyway, so it is a balance of that, the reason I'm saying this is for those out there listening, like over time, you kind of, you get how to get into that groove and when to be strategic. Hey, if I go the extra mile, that's what I was going to say. Sometimes I've helped accounts that have nothing to do with what I directly support, right? What I directly am compensated for, or help a partner on an account that isn't, because strategically, I like that partner. I like our value relationship, and I want to help them so that we can keep that relationship growing. Right. So
Yeah.
I think so. Maybe I'm putting my thoughts on what you said, but I think those are the things that get learned
you're
over
100%
time.
correct, because the times I really have not done that, because as we referred to earlier, I don't have any real desire for doing it, especially for other people, I guess. So, but I do enjoy it when I do.
That's who you were.
In the instances that I have done, it has scored a lot of points. Like I have a guy now who, like, now that I've opened that door, he is very much like, and this is a nice little word for people to know, what we call a champion for VMware in this case. Yeah. So he's singing our praises. He's trying to make all the buy-ins. He's more than willing to like help out. He's more than willing to like, hey, let's all have it. And it isn't just like hey, now we can talk to the C-level employees and, now we're talking. No, it's like, he's like, let's bring everybody into the conversation as a team and figure things out. So yeah, it does pay off if you do it right. You just have to pick the right time. Yeah.
And then you got to have that barrier, right? Like, hey, I can't just be your guy all the time. Some of the things you got to go to support for, but yeah, there are certain things I can help you with. Yeah, that is a interesting new one. These are the soft skills, right? That we learn. Hard skills are great. The soft skills you kind of learn as you get into this SE role.
Yep.
How to successfully manage
it's fun,
your
though.
day. While you also do work-life balance,
it's
right?
Fun,
We don't
though.
even talk about that much, but yeah.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of SEs. You might even know some of them that have moved on from a company. I wouldn't say they got out of the SE game, but because they maybe took that on a little too much in their role and they got burnt out too, right? Because you're trying to now be the IT support and the SE.
Burnout factor is a thing.
And so you gotta pay attention to that. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Sorry to add my 2 cents to your story, but I think that's kind of to add teeth. I think there's credibility in that. And that's an interesting take. Very early on in your SE career, you're going to do exactly that. You're going to get over that I should jump to SE. I think you're going to love it. You say, yep, I want to stay here. But then it's defining maybe who you are, right? What your brand is, how you want to be as an SE.
Yeah.
But also that line of how much I do, how much I advise on, and how much I put to the other resources that the company offers.
Yeah.
Maybe.
The only other thing I will say from a personal standpoint, and I don't know if this is something that other new SEs have experienced, but I'm going to categorize people I contact as acquaintances. So not friends of mine or close friends of mine, like work acquaintances where I wanted to get back in touch with them and all of that. I have a feeling they've ghosted me.
Oh,
so that's a thing.
Guy
I don't know if that's true. Either that was a complete jerk from the first place, and they never wanted to talk to me. But yeah, I think a lot of times, like I'll contact them. To your point, is like, hey man, it's just usually like, let's go have a beer or whatever. Nothing, and I think it's because they think I'm trying to do a salesy thing, but these people aren't even part of my account. They're not even.
Almost how you have to lead with that with all your conversations. You are not on my account list. I just want to hang out with you.
Exactly.
But
I know you have some kind of angle. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say I've had 1 or 2 of those. One sticks out very clearly that I helped a lot as a reseller. And as a reseller, you're a little more agnostic or a little more spread thin, however you want to put it.
Whatever word you want to use.
No, they're all different. But and someone I thought kind of was a friend, had a great relationship. I moved into the vendor space and it was the exact same thing. You want to go have a drink, and like my old, like it got sent to like my old rep, right? Instead of any answer to me, and I have never talked to those people again, like ever, like because I think they just had this hard, you're trying to hit me up. Which wasn't my goal at all. So there's a little bit of that.
So I guess this is advice for potential, for SEs that Fun fact, we're not always trying to sell you something.
No.
Sometimes we're lonely and just need a friend, just like you.
And we're
people too.
And we got an expense account now, guys. Let's
That's true. It's the best of both worlds. That's right.
Just kidding. Corporations that hire us.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And if we ever talk shop, it's usually because we're interested and want to help you solve something.
Inquisitive.
Not sell you something. For me anyway, right? I mean, to each their own. Obviously, we're all different. But I think for the most part, most of the SEs we've had on here are really about finding that correct solution, right? So we can do it over a beer every once in a while.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a fun role. It's a different take on it, and it'll be interesting. I think as Chris and I hopefully continue to do this podcast, it'd be great to get your take a year in too, right, or 2 years in, or at your promotion.
I will also have a blog post 1 year later to promote at the time too. There you go.
Nice.
So think of your blog post. How does that play? I don't know if you want to talk about what it covers. Obviously, it wasn't SE related stuff up to now. But speaking of abstract thinking, it's thinking out cloud. And I know we've said it a few times, but I think there's no mistake as to why it's called that. So that was an interesting fact.
Yeah.
But has it helped already with the SE thing? You see it growing? Is it a good skill set for people to maybe start adopting now if they're thinking about getting into this? I think you're going to use it less.
I mean, as far as like start doing a blog, you mean?
And
yeah.
Podcast stuff.
I am 100% a fan of anybody starting a blog anywhere. I will support you for a bunch of different reasons. It started out as like, it's a journey blog, let's call it. Let's say that, right? Whatever that means, it probably means what you think it means, but it's a journey blog. I'm on this journey of like, okay, sometimes I'll have opinions, sometimes I'll have technical posts. But recently making the transition to SE, I went through this sort of existential, like, what is this going to be now? I am a full and open book. I'm completely transparent. I made posts on like, hey, everybody, I'm an SE now. What do you think? And like, for the same reasons that you get ghosted, there might be people like, well, this was a technical blog before, but now he's going to try to sell me something with all the posts that he does. So I kind of braced myself for the fact that I might lose an audience, but then also maybe gain a new one. So I kind of felt like it's like a shift, quite honestly, because I do something different now. I do something new.
Those that want to come along with your journey will come along with you. Yeah. And
that's kind of how I approach it now.
Good point. So everybody can look for more postings out there, but they're going to come along on this journey with you. I like that. That is how I kind of struggle with that. And I don't have such a prolific blog as you do. But mine was really specifically like, hey, I did this thing. And it was a journey then. And hey, I did this thing in my lab. I built this. A lot of it was just notes for me to keep too, so I could reference it again. But, as I come over here, like, hey, do I now give them my take on what it's like to be what I do now? And the new company I work for, that's a totally different space, And I tend to think it should go that way. And you've told me that's an okay move to make. So thank you, Bryan.
Actually, you're doing the right thing. And this happened to me. When you literally use your own blog post to solve a problem that you forgot you wrote a blog post about, because I was having this issue with this, was a power CLI command that I rarely use. And I was like, I don't remember how to use this. So I went I'd totally forgotten I'd made a post about this whole thing. Yeah. I went into Google and I typed it in. The second link down was my post. And I used that to like fix the option I was looking for. I was like, okay, yeah.
This is a great blog. Like, oh, I wrote this.
Oh, yeah, wait, this is me. Yeah.
I was smart 2 years ago. Look at me.
Yeah.
So that goes back when I was teaching networking. That was the one thing I did, by the way, was document. You know what IT people don't do? They don't document. We don't document well. Not everybody, right? And they get into that bad habit. Right. So let's get in the good habit early. In fact, so much that my midterms were you had to change things. We used Nagios and I gamified it. The one that told me, I just took my notes and then I just changed everything you asked. And I said, you win. You're gonna be the most successful IT person out there. Anyway, use your blog, huh? 2 for 1. Document and
that's right.
Get out there in the world and start building a brand. So yeah, I know we're going long. I don't know if there's anything else, but what we usually ask at the end, if there isn't anything else you want to wrap up with, Bryan, I mean, you have quite a lot of wisdom here and I look forward to your year in or, checking in with you as you go forward. But we do like to ask all the guests, or we do ask all the guests. I don't know if we like it. Chris, you'll tell me if you like it. Again, kind of on this learning tip is your best, I give people an out with, and it usually ties more to their IT career, but what's the best moment you're most proud of? I think you've actually highlighted a lot of those already, but we also think it's very interesting to hear the biggest mess up that you were involved in, or that you did, or that you learned a good lesson from. And if you care to share anything like that, or one that you were privy to, that'd be awesome.
So the best day is really easy. I built we'll call it an automation platform, which I didn't build 100% myself, but I did code out zero touch ESXi rollouts, fully automated. So going from bare metal ESXi in vCenter, ready to take on VMs in 18 minutes.
Wow.
And once I got that working, because I'm the type that I don't understand when it comes from an automation standpoint. I don't understand why people can build automation and be so nonchalant about it. automation is like I have passion about a lot of things, but the automation things, I am the type who just gets so excited about it, and when it works, I'm the type that cheers and whatnot. My wife's like, "What are you cheering about? Like, did somebody score a touchdown?" Like, nope,
Yeah,
my robot worked.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
My robot did.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And look what
Yes.
it can do. And
Yeah,
it's
yes,
all
it did.
uneventful, right? It's just 18 minutes of code,
Yeah.
and then like, yeah, everything
And
works
what
now.
was
Like,
beautiful about
okay.
And what was beautiful about that is that it unlocked a whole bunch of doors for us to be, this saved the company a lot of money. It saved us a lot of time. It was sort of another step along the way to doing things that an enterprise does. So that was one of the best things. I'm gonna reword your question a little bit, because this per se wasn't really my screw up, but the worst night I ever had by far as an IT person
There you go. That's a better question. I like that. Change it.
Yeah, is December 16th, 2015.
Oh, it's memorable.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
that's how Yes, I know that for a bunch of different reasons.
How long did this day actually turn into is what I'll be curious, because I've had 32-hour days.
It turned
in IT.
into it was a 13-hour night.
Yeah, sorry. So
actually.
it added onto your day. Yeah, that's why I tell people I've had 32-hour days,
So
meaning I didn't go home for quite some time.
Yes, I did not.
Yeah.
And the way it went down is, I'll keep the sort of technology anonymous, but on this particular storage array, we ran 70 different storage arrays, and there were only two people who knew how to upgrade these arrays,
Okay.
the controllers for them, and that was me and one other guy. So we split it up, 35 and 35, and we needed to apply updates to all these before the connection cert expired for the UI for these. So it had to be done
Oh, so you had
by
a time bomb here.
December. It had a timeline. It had to be done by December 18th of this year in 2015.
Oh.
Right? So this was the very last one that needed to be done. 34 out of 35 of these updates had gone flawlessly.
Yeah.
No issues whatsoever. No problem. But
What could happen on that 35th one, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it's routine. The reason why this one was saved for dead last is because this was an infrastructure as a service healthcare cloud. So this was an array that a hospital in a co-located situation had put stuff like, I don't know, medication distribution for cancer treatments and, x-rays and just all kinds of stuff that are, part and parcel of the business for this particular hospital.
Important
but
stuff.
what they did was we knew we were going to do this update, and at 10 p.m. their time, or 10 p.m. our time, so 1 a.m. their time, was the only time we could really do this and have sort of a maintenance window to do it. So we made all the arrangements, we shut down all the applications, and sort of out of safety, so there wasn't any data loss in case something went wrong.
Okay.
And additionally, 34 out of these had been done independently with just us and our internal team. The customer wanted to be in on the call for the upgrade.
Okay.
On December, the night of December 15th or December 16th at 1 a.m. And I'm like, all right, I'm not really used to that, but it's cool. I'm a people person. It's fine. And so there's intermediaries. There's the salespeople for the product are on the line and everything.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And we sign in. A lot of cooks in the kitchen, and we get signed in, and one of the reps for the healthcare cloud that we had sold, he's like, I knew him, and he's like, hey Brian, what do you expect today? And blah blah blah. And I'm usually really good with putting everybody's mind at ease, but I opened my big mouth and I said, oh well, we're gonna know within the first 30 seconds, because if anything's going to go wrong, it's going to be in the first 30 seconds. And if that happens, and then I had this long pregnant pause. It's going to be a long night. And then he's on Teams and he's like, dude, don't say that. You know what I mean? So,
you're like, ha ha ha, so funny.
1 o'clock rolls around, start the ticket and everything. And you guys probably know this, but when it comes to doing updates to storage controllers, there are two of them, and you start updating one of them, and these are active. So you start updating one of them, it's got to fail over to the other one so that the update can take place and reboot and all that stuff. If something is going to go wrong, at least on these controllers, it's going to go wrong there.
Yeah.
Which means it's going to happen in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And Murphy's Law decided to take over, and I launched the update, and it just like fails in the first 30 seconds. It doesn't fail over. The controller goes down, and you have 80 vSphere ones, 80 vSphere data stores just all at once go offline.
Oh.
Not my fault, by the way, because the vendor had done all the like pre-checks, and they gave the good, and, all the green light, thumbs up or what. So it wasn't really my fault per se. So it gets worse because then the controller did not come back online.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, once it comes back online, it'll get realigned and all of that, and then it didn't happen. So,
did they order one off eBay like my old company did?
The controllers?
Yeah. Need a new controller.
That is the thing. Yeah, to replace it. Yeah, we're not there yet.
Sorry. Okay.
Now, so at this point, I got to call support. So I do, and I'm on sort of a separate phone call. I tell everybody, hey, it failed, but it's since all the applications are shut down anyway, we should be good. You're not going to have any data loss. It's fine. Sort of plan for this. Felt okay about it. But it's December 16th. It is rounding the corner towards Christmas. So do support people, here's a fun fact, do support people have a full staff around Christmas time when you call them up? Especially since this was an expiring cert, which is a known issue that pretty much everybody waited to the last minute for. So not only were the support staff short-staffed, a bunch of people are all calling all at once. I'm like trying to yes. So I'm like, hey, here's the thing. I had a controller fail during an upgrade, so I need you to go into it, because there's a way for them to go in and just re-register those on the other controller. They just have to do it manually now.
Okay.
So I'm like, here's the thing. I need to do this. And they're like, okay, well, we're trying to escalate because that can only be done by tier 3 or whatever. So 2 a.m. goes by. 3 a.m. goes by. 4 a.m. These data stores are all down. 4 a.m. rolls by, and people are like, hey, how come this isn't being fixed? And I'm like, I don't know. Is it support? Is this the way it's happening? And I'm trying to brainstorm with another storage person, and we come up with a grand idea of, if we unregister the LUN on the storage side and re-register it, it'll be registered on the up controller. And I'm like, that is a good idea, but we have 80 of them and it's not scripted. That is a lot. Plus you have to figure out what it is currently configured to, what's it's mapped to now, what's it zoned to. You can make a mistake, and then you're screwed. So that was kind of our last resort. And then 5 a.m. rolls around. Now remember, everybody's on the call. Charge nurses at the hospital are on the call for oncology, for all they're on the call, and we're rolling around to 5 a.m. And one of the applications person chimes in and says, well, hey, Brian, just so you know, it's going to take 2 hours for application to resync when it comes back online.
Oh, jeez.
So that means 7 a.m.
Pushed out if it works right now, 7 a.m.
Yeah, and by the way, that was said on the call in front of everybody. Yeah. The applications person said this. And that puts us at 7 a.m. And one of the charge nurses she justifiably, forgive my French, she justifiably went apeshit. She's like,
yeah,
I have people coming in for cancer treatment starting at 7 a.m. and I'm not going to tell them. And because apparently when people get cancer treatment, a lot of times they'll bring their families with them. Yeah. It's like, I can't tell these kids that their mom and dad can't get the treatment. And she's just like, and you know what? God bless her, because she was right. Yeah. Yeah. I would do the same thing.
You're like, this dumb controller is going to cause this problem in the real world, right? Which could be life and death too, right? We always say, no one dies, but
100%.
I don't know. At least the treatment doesn't happen. Yeah.
So me and this other storage guy, finally, we just started, okay, last resort, we've got to go through. And we started getting stuff, he was able to prioritize which ones were aligned with the applications. So we started getting those back online one by one. Then finally support chimed in and they ran the script, brought it back on with the one single controller, and we got everything back up and running at 7:10 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
The application too, or now you had to add the 2 hours, so it was like
everything was ready to go at 7:10 a.m. in the morning for them in their time zone. So they essentially didn't really sort of miss a beat, as it were, other than, sorry, your cancer treatment's going to be put off for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, which is, I guess, is fine.
A lot of stress and, nothing like a
deadline.
deadline.
Dude, it was
nothing like a deadline.
I was exhausted at the end of that. I was just like, wow, it was. So that's my worst night, December 16th.
Half the people on there had to go get medical treatment because of the high blood pressure they have now. Yeah.
But it's all about me. It's my problem. I was exhausted, and that's what's important.
Yeah. No, I'm just as I'm saying, but it caused repercussions. Wow. Yeah, that's nothing. Yeah. All right. So
was that the worst bad day you've had?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's bad days.
They're all something like that.
Relative.
They took down a large group of something generally, right?
Yeah,
like erases configurations on a, I don't know, UCS network or something like that, similar. Yeah. Sounds like they got back from it a little bit more. I think your stakes were a lot higher. Let's be honest.
Yours was like a bad situation that you almost had a victory at the end, right? Like you really, that was what's cool about kind of your story. You guys really turned around, made it happen. Like we said, for the customer. And I used to argue this all the time when I was in IT. I'm like, we're not just here to play with tech. We're here to support the business. Like that's what we do. Right. So that's a good one.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Oh, I could have gone. Oh, I have another one too, but it's too lengthy. I've already taken enough time, but I got a ransomware story. Maybe we'll talk about that next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Or we can record it anytime. No, ransomware. I got some interesting ones of those as well. Those are fun. I remember calling everybody in a room to show them a denial of service attack once. I thought it was pretty exciting. It was isolated, but I'm like, look at it. That's what it looks like. That's a sin flood. And they're like, why are you so excited about it? I'm like, this is the coolest thing. I'm seeing it live. This guy thinks he's got us.
I did Mac spoofing once as a demo. That was fun.
Yeah.
Remember that? Oh, this person's sending something over here, but we can see it, and we're not supposed to. Nice.
Yeah, hacking is fun. I mean,
that's fun
in a educational sense,
in a controlled demo.
Way. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well,
all right. Well, this has been great. I think maybe we can end it there. But I appreciate you sharing all these stories. I think it's a great perspective. I mean, 3 months in, you've already kind of have some of this figured out. Sounds like you have a great network. That's what kind of helped you kind of get here. You've built on it and you're reflecting just right. So thanks for sharing.
I enjoyed
with our
the
audience.
heck out of it.
Yeah. Appreciate it. It's good to be
really
here.
Good. And thank you all if you stuck with us out there listening, and let us know if you are here still. Give us some feedback. Do you like these long chats? Are we kind of hitting on things you want to hear? And we always want to make this better and the most useful it can be. Right? So.
Yeah. And
thanks,
get more
guys.
people to come hang out with us because we love having these discussions. So, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Brian.
Thank
Again,
you.
I guess that's a wrap for
See you next year.
the SE journey. And we'll see you around in the network. What are you talking about? See you at the next VMUG event. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.